It's so good to see you all. Thank you for being here with me. I grew up outside of Philadelphia, and my first summer job was when I was 10 years old, and it was selling candy door to door. Now, me and my little friends got that job one day when we were playing in the playground, and a white man pulls up in a van with no windows and said, "Would you like to earn some money?" And of course, we said, "Yeah." Oh, how naive we were. Things were a lot different back in the 80s, the early 80s. We would pile in that van and we would drive 30 minutes to a neighborhood, and we quickly realized that they were white neighborhoods that he was driving us to. And he would drop us off at this neighborhood. He would give us a cardboard box filled with candy, the candy like peanut brittle and chocolate-covered caramel turtles. And he would say, "Go sell this candy, and I'll meet you back here in about an hour and a half, and if you need more candy, I'll load you back up, and I'll send you back out again." And that's what we did. In the sweltering heat of the summer, we canvassed these neighborhoods, knocking door to door, asking people, hoping that they would buy our candy. And it was such an interesting experience. He sent us out with a script, and in the script, we said something about, if you support us, if you buy our candy, we can win a trip to Disney World. There was no trip to Disney World. But what was real was about $15 or $20 of cash that we earned at the end of every day. And I know it doesn't seem like very much, but when your heart's desire is penny candy and 25-cent arcade games, we felt like kings. You couldn't tell us anything. We all have stories about what it was like to knock on these strangers' doors. I remember my friend who walked into a yard. He was approaching the door. Now, to the back of his house, this little chihuahua came and started chasing him around the yard. And he was petrified. He started running away from the dog, throwing boxes of candy at the dog to try to get this little dog away from him. We found it hilarious. We were just dying laughing as he was struggling to get away from the dog, about 3 pounds. The homeowner finally came out, felt so horrible about what happened that she bought every box of thrown candy that he had that day. He had a good day that day. There was another instance where we would knock on the door. This man opened the door. We gave our pitch, and he said, "Hold on." And he closed the door and he went away. Now, usually this is a good sign that he's going to get money. We're going to make a sale. Instead, this man opened the door. He didn't have any money in his hand, but what he did have was a blank piece of paper, and on this blank piece of paper was a black dot. And he looked at this, pointing at this black dot, and he said, "Do you know what this is?" He said, "This is you." And he slammed the door in our faces. It changed the whole dynamic of our day. Our naivety quickly faded away, and we were faced with the cold, harsh reality of being little black boys navigating these white spaces. And we tried very hard to stay out of judgment. The Bible says the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the second is quite like it, is love your neighbor as yourself. I heard a pastor say that it's impossible to love and judge someone at the same time. To love is to ascribe worth to someone. To judge is to deprive worth to someone, to take some worth away from them. They are diametrically opposed. But as I consider that time, as I ponder that day, there's this lingering question that just sticks with me, and that is, what kind of person would do that to a little kid? What kind of person would do that? You see, his actions had impact, and he impacted us in a very significant way. And although we tried to laugh it off, it affected us. And as I gotten older, long in the tooth, they say, as my beard has gotten grayer, I'm finding that this question is the question that I ask myself every day. What kind of person am I? Or what kind of person do I aspire to be? And what do I do when I realize there's a gap in between who I am, the reality of who I am, and who I want to be. And I'm finding this question drives how we engage one another. It drives who we are. I have the privilege of working alongside many different organizations around the world, partnering with them in their journey to being a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive culture. The beautiful thing about diversity, equity, and inclusion is that it's not industry specific. It doesn't matter what size you are. You can be a small startup company, a Fortune 500 company. You can be an academic institution, a nonprofit organization. The concepts are consistent, no matter who you are. The big ideas remain the same. And there are challenges, there are nuances, there are certain things that companies have to consider when doing this work, but the work remains fairly consistent. We start by defining diversity. Diversity are our identities. Our identities like our race, our gender identity, our sexual orientation, our age, our social economic status, our religion, our neurodivergencies, just acknowledging that for some of us, our brains are wired differently than others, and we have to leave room for those natural variances in how our brains operate. We don't end with diversity. We talk about inclusion, and we ask the question, how do we create this space where no matter how you identify, this is a place where you feel welcomed, where you feel valued, where you feel respected, where you feel seen, and where you feel heard. And then once we have these people in this space, these often marginalized, underrepresented, underserved, pushed aside, discriminated against people, we ask, how are we creating environments where we have equity and equal opportunity to thrive, where people don't have the need or feel they don't have the need to shape-shift and just be who they are, to be who they're meant to be, their full, authentic selves. It's not easy work. It's actually hard work. We focus on systems, policies, practices. And my hope is that this work is impactful, that it makes a change. And I don't say this explicitly when I work with these organizations, but the challenge of what kind of person you are or what kind of person you aspire to be is at the heart of everything that I do. Because we could talk about systems and policies and practices and procedures, but behind every system or policy change, there is a person. There's a person who is this, who wants to be the person that cares about these issues. And what I find is that the people who are committed to this work, the people who are championing this work, are not doing it because they're told they have to do it. They're doing it because it is who they are. It is who they are, or it is who they aspire to be. It's deeply personal work. We've talked to a lot of organizations. Very interestingly enough, there was a study that said young millennials and Gen Zs, 83% of them, care about an organization's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion when choosing an employer. 83%. They say it's only second to salary because they have student loans to pay off. Right? But outside of salary, they care about DE&I. As a matter of fact, I'm hearing from organizations every day, they're saying in the interview, they're asking us directly, tell me about your diversity, equity, inclusion commitment. What are you doing to ensure there's equity across our organization? And if they are comparing your organization that is committed with another organization that is not, they are going with the committed organization, right? They've learned very early on that their job is a place that they can just be more, it could be more than what they do, but it's a place where they can be. See, they want to be people who care about these issues. They want to be the type of people who is making a positive social impact. This is the kind of people they want to be, and our organizations can allow them to be that. They're the most ethnically diverse generation that we've ever seen, so this work remains deeply personal for them. It's a big deal. Now, my candy selling days didn't last very long. My mother got wind of how I was spending my day, and she put a stop to that real fast. I guess things were not that different in the early 80s. And although it was a short-lived experience, not all of my experiences there were black dot experiences. I remember one house, we knocked on the door, this little girl answered the door about my age, and we gave her a pitch. She said, "Hold on, I'm gonna get my mother." And she got her mother came back, and as we began our pitch again, she didn't finish. She said, "Hold on, babies, what are you doing out here? It is too hot. You need to come inside and cool off." So she brought us inside. He said, "I'm going to give you something to drink. Would you like something to drink?" And we said, "Yeah, we would like something to drink." And so she gave us all a tall glass of iced tea. But it wasn't just any iced tea. It wasn't the powdered iced tea. It was the sun tea. It was the kind that sat on the windowsill for hours with tea bags and lemon, made with love and patience. She gave us that tea. And as we were drinking the tea, her other kids who were swimming in the pool at the time said, "Why don't you come join us and swim with us?" Everything in our body wanted to say, "Yes, let's do it," but we had candy to sell, so we didn't do it. We were fools back then. We should have gotten that pool. That tea was the best tea that I've ever had in my life. It was cold, it was refreshing, it was sweet. But it wasn't the sugar that made it sweet. It was her love, it was her care, her concern, her empathy for us that made that tea taste so good. So good. What kind of person does that? It's the kind of person that I still remember to this day. You see, I tend to remember two kinds of people. They're either black dot people or they're the iced tea people. They shape my life, these people. They're my origin story. They shape our experiences. And we remember them. And we each have this choice to make as we engage with one another. Our doing comes from our being. And how do we make people feel after they engage with us, after they interact with us? It lasts at least 40 years, right? It was a great experience growing up, and I enjoyed my childhood. And I always think about these experiences that shape our life. Our identities shape our life experience. My identity shaped my experience selling candy. Does that make sense? It's core to who we are. Kimberly Crenshaw says that our identities are a relationship with one another, with history, with institutions, right? They're core to who we are. I have my grandfather was an awesome man. He died about 10 years ago, and he was an old school. He was a Korean War vet. And although you knew he loved you, he never said those words, "I love you." I don't think I've ever heard him say it in his life. I don't think he ever said it in his whole life. And I remember as I got older, and I so admired him, I called him up one day to chat because I realized, you know what, I've never told him that I love him, so I'm going to give him a call. So I called him, we chatted for a while, and at the end of the call, I said, "Hey, Pop, I love you." And I was expecting an "I love you" back, but instead he said, "Ride," and then he hung up the phone. I didn't take it personally. It was very clear that he loved me. He didn't have to say the words. A few weeks ago, I ran into a younger cousin, 30 years old. It's funny how you get older, young gets older too. 30 years old, he's just a baby. And when I saw him, he showed me his tattoo, and on his arm he had a tattoo of our grandfathers. And right next to it said, "Hey, pork chop," because that's what my grandfather used to call him. The question I have is, what kind of man would compel another person to get their face tattooed on their shoulder? Isn't that something? You know the answer to this. Is the kind of person that made you feel that you were the only person in the world. Is the kind of person that always gave you an ear. Is the kind of person that believed in you. It's the kind of person that made you feel just comfortable in your skin. That's what kind of person. He was my tall glass of iced tea. And so my challenge to you is the challenge that I have for me every single day is, what type of person are you? What kind of person are you? And what kind of person do you aspire to be? Be that person that has positive impact in people's lives. They will never, ever forget it. Thank you.